subhanahu wa ta'ala expects that those who engage in this process of reform, al-muslihun, to first start with themselves. We have to reform ourselves first. And when I say first, that doesn't mean that each one of us has to wait until we are fully reformed before we move out and try to help others. Because then we will never move out and help others. Because none of us can become perfect. But we should constantly be working on ourselves, not just feeling that we have a message of reform to everybody, but we are secondary because some people sometimes think falsely, well, I am only one person. And so let me just spread that good message to everybody, but I am only one. Maybe that good message will reach everybody else. That's very damaging. We have to start with ourselves. And when I say start, that means start and end with ourselves. Constantly be working to reform ourselves as individuals so that our moral character, our courage, our dependence on Allah, our relationship with other people, our ability to give and sacrifice, our ability to care for others, our ability to reform areas in our own personal life where we need reform. And everybody has something. Somebody gets angry, somebody maybe in the financial dealings, somebody maybe in relationship with the other gender, somebody maybe in their own household, somebody at work. Everybody has something. We have to start from ourselves. The second is that we must then go to the people around us, the people closest to us. This is how the prophets work. This is how Prophet Muhammad worked. Prophet Muhammad came as a mercy to mankind. His message came to everybody on this earth. But he was commanded to start with his family. Whenever some advice comes, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would tell him, for example, قُلْ لِأَزْوَاجِكَ وَبَنَاتِكَ وَنِسَاءِ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. Tell your family, your wife, your children. And this is sometimes sometimes we lose that. We have to work on our family and children. We have to work on those around us. And we have to give that priority. And again, just like in the individual piece, giving it priority means that we always have to keep it in our mind. Because Allah will ask us about ourselves and about the close people around us first. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't go to the larger society. Otherwise, Prophet Nuh, for example, would never have taken the message to the larger society because his wife and his son never accepted his message. He did not say, well, they didn't accept my message, my priority is my family, then I have to put more energy in it. We do as much as we can, realizing that Allah will ask us first about those around us. And by the way, those around us includes the family and children and so on, but it also includes our neighbors. Includes our friends. Our friends. We have so many friends, so many people that we know, that we have to think about how can we take the message of Islam with its two components. Because sometimes when we say the message of Islam, we only think of one half, which is La ilaha illallah. Yes, that's very important, but that's one half. The other half is the message of reform that all the prophets came with as well. In order for people to be morally upright, in order for people to care about others, in order for people to do the right thing. This is also our obligation. The next principle or step in the Islah is to realize that reform is comprehensive. Because Islam is comprehensive. Reform is not only in one area, it encompasses so many different areas in life. And that's how Allah intended Islam to be. And that's how we need to appreciate and accept and digest the elements of reform. That it is social, and it is religious, and it is political, and it is economic, and it is moral, and it is in many different aspects in life, because that is how Islam is. Islam came to address all of these areas in life. And reform needs to address all of these areas in life. This is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted us to have. Now, that doesn't mean that each individual Or maybe even each organization or each community may not specialize. I am only going to address this type of reform. I'm only going to address issues related to family, somebody else political, somebody else economic. But we have to understand that the reform intended by Islam encompasses all of these areas. And it's not just one. And there is no need for us to belittle someone working in some other area and say this is not important. Sometimes we do that and it's very unfortunate. Islam is comprehensive. And it's comprehensive because it's a universal message. And because it's a message that came for all of humanity until the day of judgment. So we have to realize that this Islah is comprehensive. Going hand in hand in that is the realization that we must consider the environment around us in working in that reform. That the environment, where are we operating? What are the key priorities? The key priorities for every society is going to be different. For every generation it's going to be different. For every country it's going to be different. Just like for every prophet, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent him with a message of reform that was custom made for the people to whom he was sent. And so we have to realize that it is a duty on us as Muslims to understand the society where we are living, because otherwise we can never take a message of reform, which is part of the message of Islam, to that society. We have to understand the society. When I watched President Obama's speech on Wednesday night for State of the Union address, I was watching it, counting that time that I'm watching, that I would expect, inshallah, from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that it would be from my good deeds in the day of judgment. Because I am doing it in order to understand our society. This is our society. This is where we have a sphere of influence. I know that many of us have come from areas back home, and we are still, there is some attachment with what's going on back home. And that's fine to a limit. That's fine as long as it doesn't disable us from influencing where we have a sphere of influence. So that it doesn't just become an intellectual exercise where we're just watching news of what's happening overseas, but we have no influence in affecting what is happening somewhere else. Our sphere of influence as American Muslims first is this society. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent us to this society. This is our land. This is our home. And I'm not talking just the home of those who have a US citizenship. I'm talking everybody from an Islamic perspective who is now living here needs to consider that our home. And our priority, we drive that from our love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you ask many Muslims, where would you like to die, for example, many people would say, I'd like to die back home in my country. Some who might even be more religious say, I would love to die where the Prophet died in Medina, or maybe live in Mecca. But the reality of the companions that the Prophet prepared and the Prophet educated is that they did not want to die in Mecca and Medina. They left because they realized that the message of Islam means that we go out and we take that everywhere else. And that's why many of us are here today. Otherwise, if all the companions would have said, we love the Prophet so much, let us stay back in our Islamic areas and where the Prophet is and just live there. They did that to a magnitude that there came a time in Umar's time, Umar ibn al-Khattab, when he was Khalifa, that he forbade some of the companions from migrating because he couldn't have any companions to consult with. All the good people, all the core group that the Prophet educated and brought up, they all left and went somewhere else. So we have to realize that our presence in this country is a blessing. And it's intended. And it's the right way, the right place to be. And we have to focus on what we can do here for our community and for the larger society in order to fulfill what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to fulfill.